All right, we've got a new iPad in the studio, and this is the very latest, the M4 chip. And this version I've got here is the 256 gig version, which only has 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I'm going to be comparing it to my 2021 iPad to see if, you really need to get the power of the new iPad if you're a power user. And I have to come clean here and say I've made a couple of videos for Logic Pro for the iPad, and I think it's amazing. I think it's a really great piece of software, but I have not done that much with it. So I would definitely not consider myself a power user of the iPad making music. I always have these dreams of me, taking this thing to the beach or sitting in a canoe and making a hit single, but it just doesn't seem to happen. So if you are that person who really loves the portability of the iPad and taking your stuff on the road, I think this could be a great purchase for you, especially if you don't already have an iPad. And I do have to say, if you have a 2021 iPad, comparing it, you're going to see that we can get a lot of mileage out of the 2021 one. And if you're looking at other features like the brightness and stuff like that, you'll notice that there isn't a huge difference between the 2024 one and the 2021 one, 3 years apart. So before we get into some of the tests, let's just talk about a couple of other things about these iPads just so you can compare. And first one is the brightness. And I don't know if you can see this on camera very well, but this one is definitely brighter, but it's not that much brighter than the 2021 one. This one is a very bright iPad. Even using it outside in, bright conditions, it's pretty good. This one is definitely better, but it's not mind-blowingly better if you ask me. It might be mind-blowingly better compared to like a 2018 iPad, which would probably be a nice comparison as well. So if you have an older iPad, something like this is going to definitely feel like a massive update. If you have the 2021 one, it's like, yeah, it looks pretty similar, to be honest. In terms of the hard drive space, on both of these, I've got 256 gigabytes. I do have the iCloud drive, and I have the super beefed up iCloud drive, so I've got 4 terabytes of storage on there. So if you do have the iCloud drive, you may not need the bigger hard drives for the iPads. These get really expensive really quickly if you start adding more hard drive space. And the other thing you get, of course, is more RAM as you update the hard drive. So again, if you're a power user, you might want to go for the bigger hard drive. The other test I can't wait to try is actually using an SSD hard drive to edit Final Cut Pro. Because right now you have to dump your files onto your iPad in order to edit them in Final Cut Pro. So I haven't even touched Final Cut Pro for iPad because most of my videos, like the ones you're watching here, are shot on a Lumix S5 II, and those are shot in 6K, so I can crop in whenever I want to, make an edit, crop out, and now I can fix all of those crappy mistakes. But those files for an average video are about 100 gigabytes per camera. So you can imagine that I wouldn't even be able to put these 2 cameras onto an iPad to edit. So soon we will be able to hook up an SSD hard drive to the iPad to edit in Final Cut Pro. Will that be a much smoother process on the new one compared to the old one? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. That's not out yet. My next comment is going to be a big one, and it's going to be a big downside, in my opinion. And in this case, it is the speakers. Why didn't they make this iPad a little bit thicker than the old one and make the speakers more powerful? I've heard even Marques Brownlee say that he thinks the speakers on the new one are actually a little bit less bassy. And if I compare this song right now, and I'll just compare it with the audio coming out of getting picked up by my lav here, but if I compare it, let's just play this song here. Compared to this one, the old one. Okay. Same song, both of them have volume cranked, and the old one is louder. That is a huge missed opportunity in my opinion. And there's one really strong reason for that is if you're using Apple's very own AirPods, you're going to find there's way too much latency to actually play on the keyboard or to have a keyboard hooked up to it and play. The latency is so bad, you could never use that to actually record something. So what you would probably want to do in that situation is put your headphones away, use the iPad speaker, but that's not always something you can do if you're out in public, But you'd want to use the iPad speaker to play your little solos or play your parts in, and then go back to your headphones. But this could have been a situation where they made the iPad a little bit thicker, gave us more battery life, and in my opinion, even more importantly, give us better speakers. Wouldn't it be amazing if this little thing here also doubled as like a speaker? Basically, you have your iPad, you go camping, and you play your music back on your iPad. Yes, so top of my list, please, Apple, future iPad updates. Think about the speakers. So important. The other thing I will say with that is my top use for my iPad Pro here, this nice big screen, is using it with sheet music and practicing for my little jazz combo. So I put my iPad on my piano, I practice away, and often I'm using background tracks to practice too. And it's just barely loud enough for me to play over top of the piano, right? So to have more volume would be amazing. To have less volume is almost like, no, I can't even really go there for that purpose. So that aside, M4 processor. Now, do you really need the M4 processor? So this project here has 16 tracks on it. It's got like a drum beat. It's got a keyboard that I played in, like a Rhodes sound. It's got some percussion on there, as well as a bass line played by the session bass player. I messed around with the session players, and there are a million videos out there right now already on this, so I won't get into that too much. But this whole bass line that I've got in this little project here was all played by the session bass player. And I'm definitely not a fan of just slapping the name AI on everything. It just seems like a catchphrase. And in the situation with Logic and session players, and is it really AI? I guess you could make an argument that it is AI. And the reason I say that is because you can have a keyboard track that you played in, and then you can use that keyboard track to define how the bass is actually playing, the notes that the bass is playing, and where it's playing, and stuff like that. So there is an argument to be made that it is technically AI. My other concern was that it was just really cheesy, really bad sounding, and I gotta say it's actually fairly decent. Should people just ditch music skills and just use these background players to play and everything? Of course not, but it's here. And if you use it as a tool, I'm not too worried about AI taking over musicians' roles just yet. So the bass here was just played along with the session player. And I gave it a really weird chord progression too. So if I look at the chord progression in this, we got some really unorthodox chords happening. A minor 7 going to an A flat major 7, G minor 7 going to an F sharp major 7. So this really outside of the normal key kind of thing, and it handled it just fine. I also put a session percussionist in there, and then I started adding synthesizers in it, and then I just kept layering them, adding all sorts of effects until I could break the iPad. So I wanted to see how far I could push it. So I put a ton of this new Chroma Glow saturation plugin, and then we also have a whole bunch of reverbs and stuff on every track. So you can see I kind of went crazy with this. You could really get away with a massive project on the 2021 iPad. Last thing I will say before we do the test, the people I think that are going to benefit the most from this are people who already use Logic. And I don't use Logic a ton. I have it finally now, so I may start doing more videos with Logic. But the idea of sitting in the studio, recording some kind of project, it would be awesome to take that out on the iPad, do my editing on the couch or in a canoe, and then bring it back and just dump it right back onto the computer. And really, I think Logic Pro for iPad and Logic Pro are the only programs where you can actually do this and do this efficiently. We do have Bassist on the iPad, but there is no real back and forth with that software, like going literally back and forth. So that is just a massive bonus for Logic users. Very cool stuff. So let's play with this now. As I said, I've got a bunch of tracks in here that are unnecessary. I just kind of duplicated them and then turned the volume way down. And if we just play this project right now, it starts crapping out, and then I get a CPU overload. If I do this with my device monitor on, oh yeah, okay, CPU is shot up pretty high, and now it's dropping down. Let's press play. But you can see that I've almost maxed out my RAM. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be a problem because of the way these iPads can shift around storage and actually use hard drive space for RAM. We'll see if that is actually a thing. So now let's go to our new iPad. So that's working just fine. Let's look at the CPU meter here. I'm using device monitor 2. So it's going up to about 31% and it's not dying. So the other thing I've got on here is just a synth lead line, and we're gonna use 2 tracks here, but let's just see at what point this thing starts to die. If I press record, absolutely no problem at all. So this new iPad is killing it. And we've got all those useless and unnecessary reverbs and stuff on there. I think you could get a ton out of this new iPad for sure. If you've got an M1 already, a 2021 iPad, is it worth upgrading to get to this one? You have to decide that. Are you pushing your iPad already to the limits? How many people out there are actually doing that? I'd love to know, because I thought I would be somebody who'd use the iPad a lot more, and I'm just not doing it. And I've never used this thing and thought, oh man, if I only had more power, then I'd be fine. I have used this and thought, boy, I'd love to have more sound, more volume. So there you go. That's my 2 bits on the new iPad, and a little bit about the new Logic Pro for iPad with its new AI session players. And if you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell and all that. Let me know what kind of videos you want to see from me, because I'm getting really tired of doing software reviews. I'd love to do more music fundamentals and production fundamentals and stuff like that, but those really don't get the views that a new shiny object gets. So, anyways, let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.